This
report
conference will
have
now
to
be
enter.
recorded.
You
All the
just started
companies-
talking smart stuff before we could even like kick this thing off. You're just like a train.
So what he was saying is we don't know what we're going to be able to see yet when they launch Unimed. And we do know that we'll see all the names of the companies and we'll see all the names of the devices and their labeling. What won't be available in all likelihood is the number of products that are used, but that information has to be entered. Starting January 1st, the vigilance requirements change and they have a new form. Even though Unimed's delayed, they're implementing the form, the paper version already, and it requires that everybody that submits a vigilance report indicate not only how many adverse events they had, but they also have to enter how many devices were used. So if you sold 10,000 units, you have to write down you sold 10,000 units. So very quickly, the Europeans will build up an entire database of all the products that are used as vigilance reports are filed. And so that's sort of the holy grail of what is the frequency of adverse events. You don't just guess that all the companies will have to provide the real sales numbers for the last, I believe it's 4 years that they have to post that for. So you not only have to know all the devices you used this year, but also the last 3 years. And that's going to be really helpful to the notified bodies and competent authorities for creating their trend reporting that they're required to do under the new MDR. Unfortunately, none of that information will be available to companies. They'll only be able to provide the estimates that they always have been. And so the European authorities will say, no, you got that number wrong. This is what the real number is.
Packard, you just wrote on the Medica thread, the evil says they will block with intention there. Oh, you're talking about how difficult it will be for you guys to talk to one another at Medica. Your audio is off.
Sorry.
No, it's all good.
Yeah.
There we go.
So Monir, when do you fly to Germany?
Monday afternoon.
And Rob, it turns out you won't. You're hanging out near Dusseldorf, but you won't step foot in Medica at all.
Yeah, what was supposed to happen was today I was supposed to be doing an audit. And on Monday I was going to go to Medica. Instead, because the client decided that they couldn't support the audit on Friday, and instead I have to drive down to Lüneburg and conduct the audit on Monday. So I'm going to miss out on all the meetings that we set up with potential clients at Medica. So there's like 30 meetings that I'm missing out on.
Lovely.
So it's unfortunate, but the other two people that I came with, they're going to be at the event and speaking with potential clients, but I'm going to miss out on that this year. So I'll just be there for the presentation at the U.S. consulate, which is sold out now.
Okay. Well, if either of you boys are inclined to do a live stream from Medica, I've never been. I'd love for one of our, I think there's like 6 or 7 people in Premium who are going. I'd love
That's
for
a great
someone
idea.
to walk around with their camera on and just let us see what you're seeing. I mean, that'd be a gift.
I'm planning to do that. So mainly what I'm planning to do is to do some interviews, the same as what I have done in Topra. And also I'm trying to plan to do some live streams. I'm looking now, should I do that on YouTube or this and that? So I'm looking which platform is the best, if I can say, to make that and see if it's compatible with my iPhone, if we can have that. The issue is mainly about the network. I don't know if there is. I think that I'm registered there as press. I get a free Wi-Fi, so I can try to see that. So I just have to see if the network is good enough to have this live stream on YouTube. But out of that, I think we'll have everybody there to do that.
Okay, well, that'll be interesting. I hope that at a minimum you do some recording, even if you can't stream it, so that we can see something? I mean, I've just never.
No, you will see anyway. I'm doing this live stream, plus I'm doing interviews. So I already planned some interviews with people there, some companies also to share what they are doing, etc. I had some people from also Canis, I think, or I can't remember, Canvis or something from the group MDG group that said that they will be there. So we already planned a meeting together.
Karen,
So, yeah, so there is many people there that will be meeting.
Okay. Well, Rob, let's talk about the topic that we. Hey.
Hi, Richard.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Well,
Hey,
good
Richard.
morning for 4/5 of us.
Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. My pleasure. How are we all doing today?
I'm
Little
doing
tired.
wonderfully, but the other three I think are probably sleepy.
No, not at all.
Well, not Eckert, but Ryan Carpenter was on just a few minutes
Oh
ago.
no, I'm still here and I'm not sleepy.
Actually, I'm pretty awake.
Wide awake. I'm a night owl. Joe knows that.
You look tired, Joe.
A little bit, but I got my shirt on. This is
Nice.
a gift from Rob, pro napper. And tell us about your shirt there, Robert.
Yeah, Joe had posted just for fun a video with a blue ball that goes through all kinds of wild knocking over dominoes and running up and down ramps and cool things. And
Nice.
I really thought it was cool. And then I looked at the kid's website that it did it, and he had all kinds of cool videos, and he's trying to build up his own channel and get a decent following. And so I bought some of his merch to support his website. But yeah, there it is. But the shirt fits perfect.
I won't buy my son's merchandise at all. It's something to do with a wizard.
Your son has wizardry merchandise.
Yes, he streams Spellbreak, some game, and he calls himself a wizard.
Yep.
So yeah, he's got wizard all over the sweatshirts and yeah, strange stuff.
Yep.
So this video earned this guy a shirt purchase from Robert.
I suspect I'm not the only one.
Nice.
He's really got quite a cool channel.
I don't know where. Oh, there we go.
I have no idea how he did some of the stunts he pulled on his website. This one I understand, but some of the stunts he's got on his channel just are incredible. He's got one where he threw a hat and behind him without looking, and it landed on the guy's head, and they cheered. So I'm guessing that was like take 400.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that's the secret behind it, is a whole lot of takes.
Well, I'm going to show one thing, and then we'll kick off with the topic at hand.
Sure.
And I was sharing with Rob, which was the catalyst for this meeting today, that this question, private label process for FDA, is the 5th most visited page in the history of my site. So there's a lot of people looking at this, and we started with this one. This is the most visited one, where to find a list of CE marked devices. Richard, you might know a thing or two about that.
Jeez.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was saying,
they'll get it in 2 years.
Yeah, you get it in 2 years. It's good that's delayed. And we were also commenting on what would be available, but only some of the information will be available. But yes, that's where they'll get it.
Virtually all the fields that the manufacturers are going to complete for Udamed are going to be made public.
Yeah.
Really?
And so Fiona and everyone else will be able to look them up.
Yeah, there will be a full public site. I know the guy that's working on the public piece at the moment. It'll be as much searchability as they can put in at the start without destroying the databases.
What about the number of products that are used? You know, in the vigilance, they have to put in how many devices had adverse events, but they also have to put how many devices were sold. And a lot of companies are concerned that that's giving away their sales figures, and they're very concerned about that.
I don't know which of the vigilance fields will be searchable or public, because not everything will be public on the vigilance.
Yeah.
But I know on the actual general device, everything is pretty much out there. And again, with the clinical investigations and things like that, and the post-market surveillance, I'm not sure what's going to be public there. But there is, some of them are going to be locked down as fully confidential.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when we have to wait and see.
Yeah, I've been looking at some of my clients. A lot of them don't even have the ability to fill in the vigilance reports that are due January 1st. So they're like scratching their heads. How do we get this information from 4 years ago or 3 years ago? We don't have it.
Yeah, and you can just imagine the commission are going to have so much sympathy for these people.
Yeah, none.
Yeah, terrible.
Well, in fact, one thing is that the MDR is in place since more than 2 years now. So at least from that point onwards, because it's a legal process, at least from this point onwards, manufacturers should have been starting to collect their data because they knew what is coming. And if they didn't do that, what many didn't do, bad luck.
Yeah,
But we have
it's going
sympathy
to
for
be.
them.
There will be no sympathy, but everybody will have the problem. Even the big companies are struggling with how do we measure this because we don't have all the information in one place.
Yes.
Not sorted, not specifically sorted the way the Europeans want the data.
Yes, but this is not the problem of the European Commission. It's a problem of setting up your infrastructure in medical device industry. If you distribute your information everywhere around the globe and have to recollect them in a somehow crazy way, then it's bad systems engineering. And this is a fact that medical devices industry is very reluctant to apply good systems engineering habits since decades.
But they design those systems for running the company, not for meeting regulatory requirements. And that's the fundamental issue is the CEO that's paying the bill for the ERP system where all that data lies is not going to design the system specifically to make the EU happy. They're going to design it so they can run their business. And I'm not saying that it's wrong, but that's just the reality of it. They're not going to do everything just for the European Commission and the vigilance reporting, and they're going to delegate it to whoever's responsible for IT and regulatory to say, you guys figure it out. That's your problem. And no, you may not have more resources. You already have,
that's the problem.
a $250,000 ERP system. Figure it out.
You're going to have to spend another $250,000 making a connector to integrate to get the data out.
Yeah, writing your bridge software to collect all the data from 5 different sources so you can sort it the way the commission wants it.
And unfortunately, one of the points that they're so reluctant about is because they will never make money out of this.
Yeah.
It's pure expense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And they also don't like that they're going to be giving up confidential information. And the fact that it's not clear what things are confidential and what things are going to be public scares them frighteningly. I had, as soon as the regulation came out as draft, I was giving presentations at major clients, and they were saying, there's no way they'll make us divulge this information. And here we are. Here's the form, fill it in, have to be submitted as of January 1st. So it's even sooner than they were expecting to have to provide it. So they're not happy at all. They still are in denial. They actually believe that it won't happen. And I'm like, no, this form has to be filled out as of January 1st. They're like, no, it doesn't. Read
And
carefully.
it's a huge form. That mirror form is huge. It's like 10 A4 pages. That's a lot of
Yeah,
data.
they doubled the length. I believe it's 12 now. It was 6 and now it's 12.
And because Udamed is delayed, all those vigilance reports associated with MDR, they are then going to have to submit those in May 2022. Because you're going to have to keep the whole life cycle. So they're going to have to keep all this data somewhere for years.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot of fun on day one.
Mm-hmm.
If you can imagine,
I think there's an opportunity right there to create a tool that will capture all that data so it can be entered as a batch.
yeah, no, absolutely. But the problem is, because the vigilance information is a little bit different to everything else, because it does contain confidential information. I wonder how many companies are actually going to trust that being done outside of their company. Are they going to trust a third-party tool that they don't have full control over?
Good point.
The UDI device data, they won't have a problem. Here, take it, make it go away.
Yeah.
But the vigilance data is a little bit special.
Yeah.
But if there would be a tool, wouldn't it be possible to have that on site for the companies?
Yeah, but the majority of the tools that are being made available at the moment, even my own stuff, it's
they're web-based tools.
Our servers, yeah, it's all Amazon based. I mean, you can give them their direct access, you can give them their version of it, but it's still outside their infrastructure.
Yep. So if you've hit on a key issue that would inhibit sales if you make, but I think that's the solution. You make a separate version available to each client, so everything's compartmentalized with firewalls, and you can't have the information from one account go to another account. But that would definitely be of use to a lot of companies. In that way, it would overcome the problem of, well, Udimed's not live yet, and I need a tool. Well, basically give them the ability to enter all the things that they need to enter into this new database, and then upload it as a batch once Udimed goes live.
And even when you decide to upload it as a batch, you're going to be limited by size. 1 megabyte of XML is the limit. So you're going to have to have a.
Why didn't they insist on everybody use dial-up? Jeez.
Yeah.
It's like the FDA saying
1 megabyte and 300 entities.
Yeah, the FDA has this limit of 50 megabytes for file sizes, and they're asking for raw clinical data tables. Like, wait a second, these two don't work together. They're like, well, you can zip it and you can put it on a flash drive. And they're like, oh, wait a second, we can't accept flash drives. You need to send it on a CD burner. And I'm like, nobody has one of those anymore.
No.
The FDA's got like 12 computers that accept CDs and one that accepts USBs.
But Richard, it's what we discussed together about the fact that we have to collect all those data and to be sure on May 2022 that those data are not corrupted, that they are fine, that they are. If I can say, it's like a document control, so that we have on our quality management system. It's something that we have to have the control of, and to be sure when we upload that on the Udemy on May 2022 we can trust those information. And this is something that I'm not sure now that everybody will be following or understanding. But yeah, and we also discussed about this maybe MDCG group. So I don't know if you have some news about what they were talking about.
The MDCG, I got nothing. I spoke to a few people and everybody's staying very quiet. And there's no communications coming out of them. It's just radio silence.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, it's incredible, isn't it?
That usually happens when they have to hide something.
Well, they're also all political appointees too.
Yes.
So I suspect they all have a position to lose.
Well, yeah. That's a possibility as well, isn't it?
Yeah. And in fact, if they get you can interpret their silence as hiding something, but in any case, it's not a cheering like, yeah, we have it like this, we are on track, everything is fine, what they usually would do as politicians. But
Which
Yeah.
is
they
what
don't
they've
do
done for the
so.
last 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now they hit the wall.
Yep.
Now they have a
Which
great
everybody
excuse
said
for
they
them
would.
moving.
Yeah. And I don't think the other shoe has dropped yet. I'm sure we'll have other problems too.
Yes.
We just
Oh, I think they're just stacking them up.
yeah. Yeah. The problems
But
are getting
this is
bigger.
also our job to help people to mitigate against these problems.
Yes. But I've already called this the Frankenstein regulation. It's a nightmare of a regulation, and it's going to really hurt a lot of small companies, and the big companies I don't think are happy either.
No, it's a huge expense.
Yeah, it really raises the bar to get into market.
But it's creating a whole new industry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some kind of offshore medical devices market somewhere in the North Sea or in the Atlantic Ocean, where people who need a medical device are traveling to. Maybe we can buy Thomas Cook to do that service to transport people to the offshore side.
Norwegian cruise lines will all just go out on the boat for a medical vacation.
Yeah,
That's where we can get our medical devices cheaper.
What
Allow
a
me to
terrifying
redirect our conversation just a little bit because we were going to talk about private label process for FDA.
Okay, yeah.
And by the way, I guess you haven't logged in a while because I'm still showing your cartoon Rob hat. I think it will update if you log in soon, but I'm not sure. I'm still figuring this out myself. As I shared, this is one of the most frequently visited pages on the site. You gave a very nice, complete answer here, and then Gary, my UDI buddy at ReadTech, weighed in as well. Rob, why is this question so frequently searched?
There are a lot of companies out there that have products that are private labeled in Europe through own brand labeling, and they have a little bit more of a formal process, and same thing in Canada and other countries. But in the US, they don't have something called own brand labeling or private labeling as a process. You can't look it up on the FDA website and say, okay, this is how I private label something. And the laws are different in the US. And so the actual requirements, I don't know why or how it got started, but right from the beginning when they issued the QSR in 1996, the regulation was that companies could either put on manufactured by or distributed by. Another option would be manufactured for. That's something companies have created on their own, but all three of those options are viable. So if you're making the product for your own company and you're selling it yourselves, then you would say manufactured by. But if you have a distributor that doesn't want anybody to know who makes the product and they want to be the only name on the product, they set up the regulation from day one, so all you have to do is say distributed by, and the FDA is fine with that. And so it's actually a very elegant and simple process for a private labeling product. It just needs to have the label changed to say distributed by, and you can even put a sticker over old product and have it say distributed by instead of manufactured by, and the FDA is okay with that. but
That seems
a
so
lot of people are.
straightforward. Why
It
is
is.
this? I
Well,
thought when we planned this thing that you were going to give us an hour-long presentation about the complexity of it. You just answered it with that one paragraph and that's it. How come nobody knows this? How come everybody's looking this up?
well, first of all, they got to know where to look it up, and second of all, part of the challenge is who's going to have to be registered and listed with the FDA, and that's where all the details and all the discussion come in. Is, you know, yes, all you have to do is put your name and say distributed by on the label, but that doesn't take care of your registration listing issues, and those have to be addressed. But to look up this, so some people don't believe me when I say this. I'm like, literally all you have to do is go into Google and type in 21 CFR 801. So if you want to do that, Joe, you can show people real quick. Zero one, not 21.
Yeah, actually, I've spent a bit of time on this page with
And it's
Sarah
actually
McGregor. She's
it's actually the first link there, the 801.1. And you see in that second or third paragraph down, it shows you your options are manufactured for, distributed by. So they actually give you examples of this is how you can label your product.
I'll put this in the, just in case you fellas want to go to that page yourselves. Let's see if I can find chat and sharing that link over to the meeting.
That's one of the things I like to do when somebody asks me a question, I try to give them the source of the information and the regulations, because there are so many things that we believe are true that aren't necessarily exactly what the regulations say. And so you always need to go back to the source and make sure you've got the wording correct. So it does say manufactured for and distributed by, and I didn't remember it said for there as well. I actually thought that was something industry had manipulated, but no, it's in there too.
So just maybe a question for more clarification. So the company that is outside of the US should be listed on the FDA website.
Yes, so that's where we get into the complex part. If you have a product that is made by a foreign company, let's say a company in Brussels, and the company in Brussels has a 510K, but they have no distribution in the US and they want to get sales, and they have a distributor in the US that approaches them and says, we have distribution channels, we'd like to sell your product, but one of the conditions are we'd like our name on it, not yours. Well, the Brussels company can certainly export it to the US to this distributor, and the distributor can be the importer. But that also means that the distributor must register with the FDA as the initial importer. And so there's a $5,236 registration fee for the Belgian company that they can't get around, because there's the specification developer, they have the 510K, they have to register no matter what. But the distributor also has to register as the initial importer, and the company in Belgium can't get it through customs unless the initial importer is identified. And so they look at who the consignee is, and if the consignee doesn't match who the initial importer is, it gets stopped. And so you get a bunch of products stuck in customs that people want desperately and have paid money for up front. So this is one of the challenges, is who's going to pay that bill of $5,000. And when you're first starting out as a distributor, you don't have any sales, paying for the product and paying the registration fee is a big chunk of money. So a distributor that already imports other products, all they have to do is take 10 minutes and add the new product to their list that already lists several other products that they're importing. But the company that's starting out as a brand new distributor it's money that they haven't spent before, and so they have to justify it for this one brand new product that they're adding. So becoming a distributor for the first time is a challenge. Somebody that's already a distributor has a competitive advantage, and they're spreading it out over a lot of products. If there already is a distributor for, let's say there are 5 different companies out there that are already importing the product from Belgium, and somebody new wants to join because the company has said, we're not doing exclusivity, anybody that wants to be a distributor, they can. Each one of those companies has to become their own initial importer, unless one of those distributors decides they want to sell to their competitors. So you could have one company that is the initial importer, and then they sell it to multiple distributors in the US. Because it's going from a US facility to a US facility, they don't have to, the second ones down the line don't have to do any registration, and they don't have to pay that fee, but they also have to pay some sort of markup that the importer has added to the product. So
All these
depending where you are
20%.
in the food chain, you're going to pay either the FDA or you're going to pay a markup for every single product you buy. And that's where a lot of the complication comes in. Companies ask, number one, who has to pay this registration fee, and how do I do it, because they've never done it before. And if it's a new product on the market, so the Belgian company gets their 510K and now they want to register it, sometimes they don't know how to do the registration. So they need a US agent to help them do that, and they may not know how to pick a US agent. And I've even seen cases where US agents would counterfeit. So they would take your money, they would show you that they registered you, but they didn't actually register you. They just started the process, took your money, and then used that money to register another company, another company, another company. And I actually worked with a client where we actually helped the FDA identify who the counterfeiter was. And they were actually going out there and using the same money and registering multiple products. It was quite interesting to see how they had done this, but it was, surprise, surprise, it was a Chinese company doing this to other Chinese companies. And so all the companies were paying this US agent, and I use quotes around the US agent term, that was located in China to do all their work for them. And the company had no authorization to do this, and they weren't in the US, so they shouldn't have been a US agent. But they were getting the company registered for a couple of minutes and then switching that registration over to another company.
Just one thing. So here you talk mainly about the company in Belgium that is the official manufacturer, or we call it the legal manufacturer in Europe. But
Yes.
in the case that a US company is trying to get a product from a European company or from any other country and label it on their name, so this is mainly private labeling. So on this case, how is it working for that? For the registration, should they register the OEM also, but they are not the legal manufacturers, or how is it working?
I guess I need to understand a little bit better what you're asking. You're asking a company in the US wants to buy product from companies that are not registered?
Yeah.
So if the manufacturer is not registered, they can't import it.
Okay.
Both parties have to be registered, the importer and the manufacturer. Now, if the specifications developer is somebody in the US and they're buying it from a contract manufacturer, the contract manufacturer also has to be registered. So the FDA has a web page that's really valuable to look at. It's called Who Needs to Be Registered. And when you look on that page, it has a table not only telling you who needs to register, but who needs to list and who needs to pay, who needs a quality system. And that table is really valuable. But if you're buying it from a contract manufacturer, a lot of contract manufacturers don't realize that they're going to have to register with the FDA. They also don't realize that the instant they register, they're subject to inspections. Yep,
exactly.
This is the page.
Yeah,
and so now they're good. And
yeah.
I've actually had contract manufacturers, in particular China, this happens a lot, where the instant they find out that the FDA wants to inspect them, they no longer want to be shipping product to the US. They're like, we never signed up for this. We just wanted to make product for you. You're the one that has to handle all the FDA stuff. They're not coming here. We're not going to let them. And they don't seem to understand that that means you've just screwed over your customer, because they're subject to inspection as soon as they're registered, and they didn't realize what that meant.
No, it's exactly that, because there is a lot of people that are saying, okay, we will buy a product from another country, we'll just get it, we'll just put our name on it and sell it on the market under our name, but they don't see all the consequences and all the things that that manufacturers should apply. And the registration on the FDA database is really important. And it's something that I'm also looking. When I see a company, I just look on the database, is it this company registered or not on the FDA, yes or no? And if it's a no, then just inform them, hey guys, you have to register, you have to pay this fee, and it's subject to FDA inspection. And this is maybe the thing that will stop them to do that. So just
well, I don't tend to have this problem when you have 510K products, because usually the company that has the 510K is a little more savvy and prevents these kind of problems from happening. But I think the fundamental problem is occurring at the process of creating a supplier agreement, or not creating a supplier agreement when they should have one. I actually have companies argue with me over and over again. There's nowhere in the regulation where it says I have to have a supplier quality agreement with this company. And they're like, all I have to do is put in this one sentence from 820.50 that says that they have to notify us of changes, and I can put that in my purchase order, and that's all I need. And the reason why they want to have it that minimal is because they can't get their supplier to sign an agreement. And I say, time out. Do you really want to be buying something from a company that is a contract manufacturer, making your finished device and doing all the final testing and all the inspection and all the final release, sterilization, everything, that refuses to sign an agreement that says what they're responsible for? And that list of responsibilities includes subject to FDA inspection. If they aren't willing to sign that agreement, isn't that a red flag? And one of my employees was trying to figure out how we can explain this to clients, and we came up with a really cool idea. So you're going to hear it first here. We're going to create this video called how to make peanut butter or jelly, because there's this really cool, everybody's seen it, it's fantastic, but we're going to create one for supplier quality agreements. Can you imagine a supplier quality agreement for who's going to make the peanut butter and jelly? Well, you have the supplier shows up with a loaf of bread, and I show up with a loaf of bread, and neither one of us have got peanut butter or jelly. And that's where we're at with these supplier quality agreements. Well, I thought you were responsible for FDA inspection. I don't want to be, it's when you're pointing that finger and saying it's your responsibility, there are three fingers pointing right back at you saying what your responsibilities are. And what I've said to a lot of clients is, when you create these supplier quality agreements, you need to go through 820 and 801, 803 and 806 and say who's going to be responsible for what. And on the left-hand side of, it doesn't matter who's left and who's right, but on one side of the equation, you have, these are all the things I'm responsible for. And on the other side, you say, here's all the things you're responsible for. And if you own 100% of that responsibility, it's pretty easy. Where it becomes really a challenge is when you share a responsibility. If I'm responsible for 100% of it, it's not too bad. But when I'm responsible for half of it and you're responsible for half of it, you really have to spell that out and figure out how you're going to manage it. And FDA inspection is one of those. And I can't share the name of the client or some of the specifics, but I'm going to be going and doing an audit for a client at their contract manufacturer in another country. And that company is the contract manufacturer, and my client is the importer. And the challenge here is that the contract manufacturer wants to have a full FDA inspection done by me. So a mock FDA inspection that's 5 days long. Whereas a supplier audit is typically much shorter, typically only a day, because all you're looking at is the manufacturing requirements when you audit a supplier. But when you're doing a mock FDA inspection, you want to do all the things the FDA is going to look at, and it's going to be a week. So one wants a 5-day mock FDA inspection, the other one wants a 1-day supplier audit. And who's going to pay for it? We have figured out that Rob Packard's going to do the audit, and Rob Packard's going to write 2 reports to make both of them happy. Here's your mock FDA inspection report. Here's your supplier evaluation report. And I'm only going to do 1 audit and write 2 reports. And as long as both parties agree to that, that's perfectly legitimate and ethical. But what we haven't figured out yet is who's paying for it and how much they're paying for it. So skip forward ahead. If people are looking for an elegant solution to this, the client came up with the contract manufacturer is going to pay their share in product. So they're going to get some free product from the contract manufacturer, which of course is going to be treated as a free sales promotion, and there probably won't be any taxes paid on that. So it's a great solution for both parties.
Nice.
So I thought that was a nice, elegant solution. They're only paying for 1 visit from Rob Packard. Rob Packard generates 2 reports, and cash only goes from the U.S. company to Rob instead of doing an international wire transfer, and instead product goes to the importer as a compensation for this. So we've got an elegant solution for this that could be copied by other companies, but you have to have supplier quality agreements that spell this stuff out, because what should have been done 3 months ago took us 3 months to figure out. And so if the FDA was actually knocking on the door now, we would be in some serious hurt. But fortunately, we're being very proactive, and that's not something that normally happens. Companies are not normally proactive and say, we really ought to do a mock FDA inspection before the FDA contacts us and says we're going to be there in 6 to 8 weeks. Because if they call me and they say the FDA called last week, or worse, a month ago, and we need somebody to come prepare us for an FDA inspection, by the time I make my flight arrangement and fit it into my schedule, get there and do the audit, you might only have 1 or 2 weeks before the FDA is showing up, and that's not enough time to implement any corrective actions. And
Hey, Robert.
if anybody thinks I'm going to audit for a week and find nothing for you to fix, you're mistaken.
I thought I'd wait for a natural break in your speech, but that could have been another 5 minutes. My friend Sarah is not feeling great. She just jumped on the call just to say hi. Put on your mic for a second, Sarah. Put on your mic for a second. She does labeling all day long for a living. Just tell us a little bit about Prism and then go back to bed.
Thank you. Prism ID has been around for quite a while. We primarily work with large life science organizations and developed a labeling software solution in liaison with a number of those very large life science organizations to help them achieve compliance with the FDA and the EU MDR requirements. We're the only organization who does this without you having to buy an additional compliance package to wrap around it. We now offer a cloud platform labeling solution, which is again another validated cloud labeling solution available to smaller organizations. So it's all about compliance for us and label data and making sure that you comply with FDA 21 CFR parts 11, 8, 10, and 820, and of course now the EU MDR. So very happy to talk to any of you if we can help anybody at all with labeling requirements. We've got quite an extensive library of resources as well to help organizations get a better understanding of EU MDR requirements, etc. So thank you for letting me join in and hear you talking today. Hopefully I get another opportunity to talk to you. And as I say, we are the only compliance ready validatable labeling solution provider in the life sciences industry. And
I asked you this a couple of months back. You confirm this again? Because I'm thinking, how could any labeler at this point with a labeling software not offer a compliance solution and still be on the market? I mean, that doesn't make sense to me. Isn't that like a basic requirement?
Well,
No.
no, because some of the
Why
other
is it
labeling
then?
organizations, they partner. They partner with other companies who do the validation piece for them, or the customer does the validation piece themselves.
Yeah, most
Which is,
require the company to do it themselves.
yeah, yeah.
It's one of the big
Well,
ways to get your costs down on your product is not validate it and put that on the customer, but that becomes an obstacle to selling it.
yeah. Whereas our solution probably takes the customer about 90% of the way there, because we can't validate the data and we can't validate the labeling process from creation to production print. But what we can do is validate the architecture and the platform, the software and everything else around it, and then provide some support. So we give our clients a validation pack, and that gives them all of the guidance on how to finish off that validation piece for them. And
Yeah.
as I say, our software is deliberately created and constructed to meet FDA requirements, GAMP5, and all of the other things that organizations have to comply with. So we've tried to make it as easy as possible for organizations to meet the requirements, because it is a very onerous, as you'll know, Rob, very onerous process trying to remain compliant and validated.
Would you
That's
guys
what you want
be
to look
interested?
for all the time.
Would
Yeah.
you guys be interested in a future week when she's feeling better to see a demo of it? Would that be interesting for you guys?
Sure. Yeah, I have clients that are always asking about, do you recommend a software package? And Prism has done some webinars with you in the past, so it's been a package that I've pointed customers to in the past.
Okay.
I think the difference was before it was very expensive, and it was only the
Right.
top 20 med device and life science organizations could afford it. But we've changed it, so we've introduced a solution that works for startups as well. So there might
Wow.
only be 2 of you in the company. Yeah, so it's exactly the same software. We've just made it affordable to smaller companies because
She
they
has a
still have to comply.
She has a SaaS solution now that you can just buy a seat for, and
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken, it's a 4-figure per
Yeah.
year license that you can
Yeah.
start at. So that's
Yeah.
a big. When did you introduce that? How long ago?
It's been out since it's coming up to close to 2 years, but it's been very difficult for us because people make an assumption that Prism ID is a big labeling solution provider that's very expensive.
You know, you should
It's
get a
been-
marketer to help you.
strange, we do have one, or I certainly do anyway.
Right. Thanks for coming on despite your. You want to
Thank you.
introduce everyone to the cats, or?
No, they've gone.
They ran away?
I have 2 cats.
She has
Yes, Harley
Siamese cat.
D and Billie Jean. Yes, they're named after motorbikes. So
Nice.
And she'll be in London, so you'll meet Rob and Monir in person. She's just 40
Okay,
minutes north
perfect.
of where we're having our event.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, feel better.
I'll try. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
I like when a plan comes together and I happen to know people in various aspects of life that we can call on a resource.
Yeah, you have more connections than anybody else I know.
The connector.
Yeah. Well, it's
what you do with them too. It's not. I mean, I have lots of connections, but I don't know everybody the way you know everybody. You
True.
take your time to get to know people and get to know them on a personal level. Whereas I can tell you a lot more about their registration listing than I can tell you about their cat.
Let's just say that my work is easier than yours.
Different, not easier.
I think it is. Well,
Keeping all the
that's why we-
cats' names straight would be a challenge.
I'll admit, earlier today I had a problem telling Harley from Willie apart. But anyhow, what else private label-y do you want to share with us? Are any of the things on the who must register list and pay the fee interesting for me to click on for the group?
I think it would be good to go back to that and scroll down just a little bit. So these three columns, one is saying who must register,
Hmm.
the second one's saying who must list, and the third one's saying who must pay.
Is this
What it
Medusa?
doesn't, it's the Medusa 4 user fee, which is $5,236, and there's no small business discount for it.
Hmm.
The listing is listing the device, and then the registration is each site. So you have a site establishment registration and a product listing, and then a user fee payment. But
Pick one for me to dig into. You want to talk about relabelers?
Relabeler would be good, but you also see.
Oh, it just takes me down here.
Yeah,
It's
it
me to
just
a new
goes
page.
to what the definition of that function is.
Yeah.
But underneath these, they also have quality system requirements. And so a lot of companies ask me the question of, okay, I'm a relabeler, what do I need for a quality system?
Where do I
Or
go
I'm
for
a
that?
distributor, and that is dependent on the individual company. And that's where they really need to bring in a consultant to help them, because a lot of companies are under the impression, well, this is exempt, so I don't need to have any of that stuff. And there's 510K exempt and there's GMP exempt, and those are not the same. 510K exempt, they've gone from 200 something products to almost 500 products. And when I say products, I mean product classification codes that are exempt from a 510K in just the span of 2 years. So they basically doubled the number of devices in terms of product categories that are 510K exempt in just 2 years.
Why?
So that's a big
Just
shift.
to take their workload down?
Yeah, based on adverse event profiles. So if it has a good adverse event profile and it's relatively safe, they don't want to have to do a 510K review
Are you
for it.
concerned about patient safety as a result of this change?
No. I have concerns more on the high end, not on the low end.
Go on.
I don't think the 510K is what gives it safety. For instance, let's take a product that I know is 510K exempt. If you have a UV light product, a lot of these light products are 510K exempt, and you have to some of them, they had a time period where they didn't require the companies to submit their reports on the light to the FDA. Now they require them to submit those reports, but they don't require a 510K. But the safety of the device has very little to do with the technical specifics of the light design, and have a whole lot more to do with usability issues. So whether it's 510K required or not isn't necessarily going to catch the usability errors with the device when you have a Chinese manufacturer that's translating it in Google Translator. And that's literally what I've seen some companies do. They'll take their instructions in their language, translate it in Google Translator, and start selling it on the market. And if the FDA is going to not look at the instruction for use in detail and really determine whether there are usability issues with the product, they're not going to know that this is a real problem for this device. And supposedly they're saying, well, if it's substantially equivalent for all technical aspects, then we don't need a human factors study. But if it has some technological differences, then we do need the human factors study. Well, companies are the ones that provide all the information that they're making their decision on. And sometimes by writing the device description a certain way, it's not obvious to the FDA what kind of human factors might be lurking in the background. And the company may not even be aware of them. But I see big differences by one little tiny design change in usability all the time. And so it's really the human factors stuff is where we see a lot of the injuries occurring. The other place we see it is in software. So you look at labeling, software, and human factors. Those are the three big areas where you're going to see injuries occur as a root cause. It's not because the device is inherently unsafe. It's because it wasn't designed for usability, so people have use errors. And the companies often say, oh, well, it's not my fault. The user's too stupid to use my product. They didn't follow the directions that you translated in Google Translator.
You know, just about every time I talk with you, you just completely overload my circuits, and I don't even know what to ask next because I was hardly able to retain what you just said in spite of myself. I brought this up. It's the first post I made when I redesigned this site a year and change ago, where now we're exempt from 510K, and here's Kessler saying 510K in and of itself is an unfortunate relic that came from this legislation, that even that is kind of letting a lot of things go by that probably shouldn't have gotten by. So there certainly is a shortage of videos and movies and exposés about medical devices gone bad.
Well, I don't even think that really, his statement really captures how bad it is. Right now, a lot of companies ask me questions about de novos. But in terms of the number of actual de novos that I believe were approved year to date, I believe it's 16. The number of PMAs, in contrast, is 25. So we actually have more PMAs, original PMAs, not supplements, original PMAs that have been approved in the US than de novos year to date.
Remind me again the difference, because I know they both are. De novo means of new.
Yeah,
and
so
PMA is because there's no predicate. So what's the difference again?
Both of them, there's no predicate, but the PMA is approval by the FDA, and they had a panel review of the clinical data, and it was a required clinical study. And it's a class 3 device that requires mandatory post-market surveillance, and it requires continued post-market surveillance even well into the future, and it requires supplements be submitted anytime a change is made.
So de novo is that minus what?
De novo is very different. A PMA has all those things. The biggest cost of all is the supplements. If you make a change to a measurement method, if you make a change to the labeling, if you change a supplier of a minor component, all of those things trigger a supplement. And the supplements cost money and take time to be approved because they have to be approved before you can make the change. You can't just do letters to file like you do with 510Ks. A de novo is the first product of a new product classification getting on the market. And then every other submission after that is a 510K. Or it could be 510K exempt. We do have a few where they've filed a de novo and they got a 510K exempt category created. But it's rare. And so the FDA just doesn't willy-nilly create new product classifications whenever somebody requests one. They have this formal process, and they typically require clinical data for any new product classifications they're going to create. So there's still clinical data, but they don't have the post-market requirements. So you don't have to do mandatory post-market surveillance. That's not part of the de novo process, and the FDA doesn't actually have the legal right to do that. They only have the legal right to do that for PMA products, and that's one of the things the FDA is considering making a fundamental legal change on, but it requires Congress to approve that change. Another thing that's quite different is they don't have to do any supplements. So they make a change to a supplier, they make a change to a measurement method. Those are letters to file. They validate it internally, but the FDA never sees that except during an inspection. So there's quite a big difference between the post-market process of PMAs and the post-market process of de novos. And that first submission cost is different. A lot of people focus on what they have to pay for a user fee, but they forget that a small company doing a PMA, their first one's free. So the actual PMA costs less than a de novo does for the first one. It's only the second, third, and fourth one that costs you money for a PMA. In contrast,
I can't hear you.
Yeah, we cannot hear you, sorry.
So 5 PMA de novo, I was saying 25 PMAs, 55 there are 238 that were cleared in August alone. Looks like I have some technical difficulties with my...
You do have some technical difficulties, and it might just be, and this is just me taking a guess, it might just be because it's 2 a.m. my time, and God is saying, if you let Rob talk for another hour...
Joe will die.
So I think this might be a fitting time to say, thank you, Robert, put your hands together, but we have to have you back, and maybe at a more forgiving hour.
Sure.
If your mic can handle it, just one more thing that you brought up was I've had dozens, perhaps, of people who work for translation companies talk to me and be like, can I talk to your whole medical devices group and tell them about my service? And you make the point about the fallacy of using Google to translate stuff. And yet,
yes.
with the exception of, say, a few years back, I had Argo Translation give a great presentation on translation and why I used them personally when I was a director of marketing communications for a publicly traded medical device company. It almost never comes up in the group. People don't talk about translation very much. And I don't know, perhaps we should bring light to it again to let people know that this is a necessary expense. You can't rely on just some free software, and you need, I mean, what are you guys are polyglots.
Yeah, it's really something that is also difficult for the European Union. Mainly when we get some products coming from the US with the master IFU with the US language or with English, and that has to be translated with other languages, then there can be some differences also in the meaning. So then when people are using the products, they say, oh, but it says that, but yeah, if you are not a native speaker or really understanding both language, you can use some wording, just translating word by word, and then at the end, it doesn't mean exactly the same thing as what originally it was meant. And this will be really a difficulty also in Europe now, because now on the MDR, there is a requirement to say that any of the IFU or any of the information should be on the local accepted language. And for example, in France, the local accepted language is French. In Norway, the local accepted language is Norwegian. So at the end, you will have any way to translate that, and none of your products can enter those countries without this language correctly put on the product. So this is really a challenge for a lot of people, and I think cross translation is something that can create a lot of issues. When I was working mainly for also big companies, the issue was the fact that we are sending some products, for example, in a foreign country, and the distributor there was creating his own IFU or his own labeling with his own language, but which we didn't know at all. So we discovered that later. And then at the end, we received a complaint for product because we were not explaining well how it is used. And when we get back the IFU, we make a comparison with the company and we say, yeah, it doesn't mean exactly the same thing. So it's something that's happening. So controlling the distributors, controlling those information, having a company that is really serious to do that is really key, because at the end, it's also you can put also your products in danger, because we had, for example, the warning from the Ministry of Health of a country saying we want to stop your products until you correct all that, because it creates a lot of confusion. So this is something that is, I think, really important.
the new MDR is going to address some of that by requiring that the authorized representative, the initial importer, and the distributors verify the accuracy of the translations that they're shipping into their countries. How that actually gets done is somewhat up for grabs, but the expectation is that you're going to have the company provide evidence that they've done a proper reverse translation and reconciliation, or the distributor themselves or the importer would be doing that. But a lot of companies aren't doing it right, and you have the problems you described. What I in general recommend to clients, particularly any companies with electromedical devices or software, is to try to convert things over to video as much as possible, because the video instructions are much more thorough than something that is going to be written. They always say you can say 1,000 words with a picture, but you can say 1,000 pictures with a video. So you're getting 1,000,000 times more information than you are with a standard user manual when you have a video provided to somebody. And if you get very clever and insert things into those videos like green smiley faces and red frown faces to explain good and bad methods of doing something, so it doesn't require somebody to say this is the wrong way, this is the right way, and then translate it. You can use symbols that are very clear to people indicating this is the wrong way and this is the right way, and save yourself a lot of money in translation by using videos instead. Not everything can be done that way, but a lot of things can be done that way. And I would say probably more than half of my clients have switched over to using video for a lot of things and weren't aware, oh, we can use video. I'm like, yes, you can even submit videos to the FDA in a 510K. You just need to know how.
Oh, Robert, I was thinking of cutting your mic. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. I am falling apart. But before we go, Ryan just came on. Introduce yourself, tell everyone what you do, and then I'll go to sleep. Unless I can get Celia to come on and say hello. She's been listening. So maybe she'll come on long enough to introduce herself. But Ryan, go ahead.
Yep. Hi, I'm Ryan. I do literature review, and I'm focusing mainly on CERs because that's where there's so much of a need for literature review. But I chimed in to just make a comment about the translation, having been in a global marketing department that was responsible for lots of translations. I think it deserves to be said that part of the issue with translation is that the problems actually begin long before the translation, which is that there's often nobody representing all of the languages and countries that need the materials in the first place. So there might be nobody in-house pointing out the gaps. So that's one of the issues. And I think another one of the issues is that the way you produce material, how you interact as you produce material, how you write things, where you store things. There's proliferation of files and proliferation of slides and materials that just get spread everywhere and copied, and not good control over where the text is. So it's easy for things not to get translated because often the material that needs to be translated hasn't been tracked and kept in an organized way in the first place. So it's not in the system, essentially. I do have some thoughts about this, but that's for another call.
I have to give it up to Ryan. He's lasted better than I have. He's in my time zone and looks rather alert.
Yeah.
And Celia came on. She's in Portugal.
Hi, Celia.
Hi.
Hi. Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Yes, we can.
It's great to talk with all of you. And I was very busy today, so I couldn't join. But I was listening to everything. And this question of, so maybe I'll just introduce myself. So I'm responsible for regulatory and quality in medical device companies, more specifically in a software as a medical device company. And actually labeling and translation is it's quite an issue, and I had no idea we could do video as a manual, and that can be very, very interesting because we have a lot of issues, and especially being based in Portugal. Of course, our main market cannot be only Portugal. We need to go through Europe, and in each of the countries we have all the different languages, and we need to make sure that our software is understandable by every single physician and every single person and every single user. So this is very important, and it's something that we are still trying to understand what's the best way to do all the translations and managing, because in our case it's not only the IFU but also the software itself and how to manage all of it. So this is quite an issue for us because we need to make sure that everything is safe and for the user, and in that case they need to really understand it.
It sounds to me as though if I were to get my my go-to for translations to give us a talk, that would be valuable for folks.
For me,
I have one quick question. Rob, you said the videos are acceptable under in the US. Are they acceptable under MDR?
Under the MDR, they had a big argument for a while over whether paper leaflets were required or whether electronic IFUs would be allowed. And the Germans were stalling and said, no, it must be a paper leaflet. But what we're talking about here is a video to explain how to use software. And in that particular situation, it would meet the requirements for the electronic IFU that had been finally agreed upon in a guidance. The final guidance that they agreed upon said that if you have software as a device or electromedical device with a display, it is acceptable to have an electronic IFU. But if you have a passive device, that wouldn't be possible to have an electronic IFU because you can't ship a monitor with the device. But in her case, she's got a software product, so it is certainly possible and would meet the European requirements for an electronic IFU. And if there is somebody out there that wants to make a stink about you also need a paper IFU, you would just do a transcription of the content. But I would argue that that's not going to get you what you want at all, because even though it would meet the letter of the law, and if you translated it would meet all the translation requirements, it wouldn't tell you 1/10 of what they're communicating, because the whole point of doing a video for a software company would be to show people where to click and how to change things in configurations and how to set it up and how to view it. And that wouldn't be clear unless you can see. I make that mistake a lot of times when I'm trying to teach people how to do things on the FDA website. If they can't see my screen and they can only hear it, they'll lose all the training. So a podcast works great if it's a video, but a podcast that's just audio really fails when you're trying to teach somebody how to navigate a website or a software platform. So I think video is an actually essential tool for companies that have software and electromedical devices with displays in order to properly demonstrate how to use the device, because otherwise you don't know where to click. You can't adequately explain, click here. Where is here?
Very true.
Guys,
Joe's giving us the red light.
Joe looks like he's about to fall asleep there.
this concludes our call.
Thank you very much, Joe.
Good night,
Thank you,
everybody.
Joe. Have a good sleep.
Talk to you
All right.
soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, guys. Take care.
All right.